Today, Mastering Chaos. Welcome back to Marvel America, where history meets heroism, and we uncover lessons that bridge the past with the present. Each week, we explore a significant historical figure alongside a Marvel superhero to draw insights that can inspire us today. This week, we're diving into the brilliant, chaotic minds of Alexander Hamilton, one of America's most influential founding members, and Doctor Strange, the Sorcerer Supreme. Let's step back into the late 18th century, where the newly formed United States of America needed visionaries to shape its path. Enter Alexander Hamilton, an immigrant from the Caribbean who rose to become George Washington's trusted aide, the first Secretary of the Treasury, and a fierce advocate for a strong, centralized government. Alexander Hamilton was born of humble beginnings. He was born out of wedlock in Nevis, which was an island in the Caribbean, southeast of the Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico. It's in the West Indies. And the date of his birth is up for discussion, somewhere between 1755 and 1757. Hamilton overcame poverty with his intellect. His determination won him a chance to travel to New York for an education. As a young man, Hamilton distinguished himself as a brilliant military tactician and a great writer. He served as Washington's right-hand man during the American Revolution. Because of his intellect and the power of the pen, he became the first Secretary of the Treasury, and he laid the groundwork for the modern financial system. He established the U.S. Mint, the National Bank, and the federal economic policies that spurred economic growth. Now, in case you didn't know, the U.S. Mint, which he established, was America's physical currency, and he standardized it across all states. The National Bank, which he helped establish, helped manage government funds, collect taxes, pay off national debt, and it provided loans to businesses, which fueled economic growth. One of Hamilton's major economic policies was that he proposed the federal government take on all state debts from the Revolutionary War, which actually helped unify the states and established credit for the country. By paying off debts in full, America gained trust from domestic and foreign investors, which was huge. Hamilton was big on tariffs, taxes on imported goods, to protect budding American industries and generate revenue. He also suggested an excise tax on certain goods, like whiskey, which helped fund government expenses. Hamilton was a champion of industry. He believed in supporting manufacturing to build a stronger, more diverse economy, moving away from a reliance on agriculture alone. He laid out plans to support industry and infrastructure that laid the foundation for the America we are familiar with today. Perhaps over the years you've heard of the clash between Hamilton and Jefferson. Hamilton, as we know, favored a strong central government with broad powers. Jefferson, on the other hand, believed the U.S. should remain an agrarian society with a focus on independent farmers as the backbone of the economy. If we take a step back and look at our society today, it's obvious that Hamilton's vision won out, and that has brought a lot of development and growth and advancement, innovation to no end. But we've reached a point where we're looking back to Jefferson's vision and thinking, whoa, maybe we need to focus more on helping independent farmers, making them once again the backbone of our economy. Because when we switched to industrial farming on a grand scale, that fed billions worldwide. But we realized that's not sustainable, and it's causing a lot of chronic health issues when people are eating food that is no longer as nutrient dense as it once was. We can analyze the two visions and take the good and the bad from each, and hopefully find a system that works the best. Now let's talk about the National Bank. Hamilton proposed and championed a national bank to stabilize the economy, to manage debt, and to provide loans. And this paved the way for opportunity and growth. Jefferson opposed the national bank. He argued it was unconstitutional and gave too much power to the federal government. It's interesting now to review the two visions of these two men and to realize there's always a give and take. For instance, the dollar is in question. Is that going to be our currency of the future? We talk about crypto, gold. What should be the national standard? Does the federal government have too much power? We'll see what the future dictates. These two gentlemen also had different views of the Constitution. Hamilton adopted a loose interpretation, allowing for implied powers of the federal government. Jefferson preferred a strict interpretation. He believed the government should only exercise powers explicitly granted by the Constitution. When it came to foreign policy, Hamilton favored closer ties with Britain due to its strong economy and trade opportunities to help boost America's economy. Jefferson, on the other hand, preferred alignment with France, supporting its revolutionary views and viewing Britain as a threat to American independence. Their different views reflected contrasting visions of America's future and ultimately led to the formation of the first political parties, Hamilton's Federalists and Jefferson's Democratic Republicans. Perhaps you've heard of the Federalist Papers. Hamilton was a co-author of this document. He helped advocate for the ratification of the Constitution, influencing the political fabric of the nation. Although Hamilton was a polarizing figure, and in a moment I'll get into the reason why that was the case, his contributions cemented him as the founding architect of American strength. I mean, this guy's life was one of ceaseless energy and ambition. He thrived in chaos. He pushed himself to the limit to build systems that others couldn't even fathom. His relentless pursuit of excellence, even at great personal cost, which we'll talk about, teaches us that resilience and bold ideas can shape history. Now let's turn to the world of Marvel and look at Doctor Strange. This was a man whose journey from ego to enlightenment shows us how mastery over chaos can unlock a higher purpose. Strange starts as an arrogant neurosurgeon. He's fixated on success and acclaim, but fate had different plans for him. This sounds all too familiar for those of you who listened to last episode about Tony Stark, aka Iron Man. If you're at all familiar with Dr. Stephen Strange's origin story, you know that he gets into an accident that ends his surgical career. His desperate search for healing leads him to Kamar Taj, where he discovered a new path as a sorcerer. Dr. Strange's training reveals a world beyond the physical, where knowledge and discipline turn chaos into power. He eventually becomes the Sorcerer Supreme, protector of Earth against mystical threats. Strange's journey forces him to set aside his ego, embrace humility, and put the safety of the world above his personal desires. His encounters with the multiversal threats teach him that power comes with a price, and sometimes that price is steep. Strange's story is one of transformation. We can all relate to transforming throughout our lives. He went from seeking control over his life to becoming a guardian of reality itself, showing that true mastery requires not just power, but the will to serve a higher purpose. Like Hamilton, he turned chaos into opportunity and used his unmatched intellect to protect what matters. Sometimes life throws us into battles that feel impossible to win. I found myself in one of those battles when the COVID pandemic cut off my income stream and I was staring down a mountain of debt built up over decades. It was overwhelming to say the least, and I couldn't even make the minimum payments. I had to take jobs that weren't my passion, public school teaching, bagging groceries, just to get back on my feet. Every day, I worked not only to pay off that debt, but to break free from the cycle that had kept me bound for years. And I had to work on my character, realizing I cannot control my destiny. I have to roll with it. It's the decisions I make in moments of adversity that define me. So I bore down, did what I had to do to get out of debt, so I can once again focus on what really lights my fire and pursue meaning and purpose with passion and exuberance. I felt like I had a certain amount of power, control when I was able to make minimum monthly payments, but it was a false sense of security. Strange was a man of immense power and control, yet he faced a breaking point that forced him to confront his own ego, just like I was forced to face mine when I realized I was just balancing a tightrope my whole life. He had to strip away everything he thought he needed to survive, just as I had to let go of my former life and ambitions. Strange's transformation wasn't about regaining control. It was about letting go of it to serve a greater purpose. Like him, I turned chaos into opportunity. I pushed through with a fierce determination to build a life of true freedom. And now I'm debt-free. I want my story to show that sometimes life requires us to sacrifice control to find a higher calling. For me, that meant creating a path towards a sustainable, self-sufficient life where I can support my family and community no matter what life throws at me. Don't wait around for a crisis to force you to act. Take control now, not over everything around you, but over your choices and direction. Work hard, make the sacrifices, and invest in a life that not only gives you peace, but also gives you purpose. Not only can I strive towards my sustainable lifestyle, which has been a dream of mine for years, but I can also pursue my arts, make my movies, produce YouTube videos, continue this podcast, and live the life I want to live. We all have our strengths and we have our flaws. There's a double-edged sword to ambition. Ask Alexander Hamilton. There was a price to his relentlessness. His ambition was both his greatest strength and his fatal flaw, literally. His aggressive tactics won him victories, but also earned him powerful enemies. His drive for recognition and his inability to compromise led to his tragic end in a duel with Aaron Burr. Alexander was also involved in a scandalous affair, which made him vulnerable to personal and political attacks. His affair with Maria Reynolds. In the early 1790s, he had an affair with Maria Reynolds, a married woman. When her husband James Reynolds discovered the affair, he blackmails Hamilton for hush money to keep him quiet. Hamilton complies, paying Reynolds to avoid public scandal. But it comes back to haunt him. Years later, in 1797, political opponents, including, yes, Thomas Jefferson's ally James Monroe, discovered evidence of Hamilton's payments to Reynolds. Suspecting financial misconduct, they threatened to expose him. To clear his name from corruption charges, Hamilton makes the bold choice to publicly confess to the affair in what's known as the Reynolds pamphlet, which shocked the public and deeply hurt his wife, Eliza, as you can imagine. This scandal damaged Hamilton's reputation, weakening his political standing and credibility. It exposes a personal vulnerability that tarnishes his image as a leader and family man. Just as Hamilton's aggressive tactics in the bedroom caught up to him, well, his aggressive tactics in the political arena also caught up with him. Hamilton and Aaron Burr were political adversaries, with Hamilton as a Federalist and Burr leaning more towards Democratic Republican ideals. They frequently clashed over policies and ideologies, with Hamilton publicly opposing Burr's views. In the election of 1800, Aaron Burr runs as Thomas Jefferson's vice presidential candidate. But the election ends in a tie. Hamilton, though a Federalist and opponent of Jefferson, sees Burr as untrustworthy and lobbied hard to break the tie in Jefferson's favor. This, of course, fuels Burr's resentment toward Hamilton. Flash forward 4 years later, Burr runs for governor of New York, hoping to gain influence after being marginalized as Jefferson's vice president. Hamilton again actively campaigns against Burr, further damaging Burr's reputation and contributing to his loss. Throughout Burr's career, Hamilton was always criticizing him publicly, questioning his character and integrity. These statements were circulated widely, diminishing Burr's standing in the political arena. That same year, Dr. Charles Cooper publishes a letter claiming that Hamilton had expressed a despicable opinion of Burr at a dinner party. Burr, feeling his honor was at stake, demanded a retraction. But Hamilton, as stubborn as he was, refuses to apologize or clarify his comments. And thus, with his reputation and honor on the line, Aaron Burr issued a formal challenge to duel Hamilton. Though dueling was illegal, it was still used to settle matters of honor. Hamilton reluctantly accepts, meets Burr in Weehawken, New Jersey. Burr was an experienced marksman. Hamilton was not. So Hamilton gets into this knowing he's at a disadvantage. On July 11th, 1804, the duel results in Hamilton being fatally wounded. He dies the following day, marking a tragic end to the rivalry and a cautionary tale of unchecked ambition and relentless pursuit of personal honor. I've learned that ambition, when unchecked, can lead to burnout and strained relationships. Like Hamilton, I've pushed myself to achieve, whether it's in acting, teaching, or building my homestead vision. But I've come to realize that the journey is not just about achieving, but how we balance ambition with collaboration and humility. I always prided myself on my ambition, my ability to pursue my passions on my own. I didn't need anybody. But in that pursuit, I failed to realize I was slowly slipping into this isolation mode, where it's all about self-preservation, looking out for my best interests. I never looked around me and sought opportunities to serve, to give back, to help others. And lo and behold, I go back to the pandemic. When that hit and I couldn't pay my debts, I had to rely on family and friends to loan me money to help me get back on my feet. It's all been paid off now, and my ambition is intact. I'm back to pursuing what I want to pursue, but this time with the knowledge that my pursuits are meaningless if it's absent of collaboration and humility. So I'm always looking for ways to serve. Each day when I wake up, am I doing something to help somebody else? Am I making a difference? Dr. Strange's struggle was internal. His ego nearly cost him everything, but his rebirth as the Sorcerer Supreme taught him to harness his power for the greater good. Yet even as a hero, he sometimes fell into the trap of believing he was the only one who could solve the problem. There have been times in my life when I felt unworthy of the roles I took on, questioning my ability to make a real impact. Dr. Strange's story reminds me that confidence and humility are two sides of the same coin. You need enough ego to step up, but enough humility to know you're part of a larger mission. Case in point, for years, when I do comedy improv or perform on stage or even get a role that required an accent, I was reluctant to do that accent. And when I did, I always felt like an imposter. Have you ever felt that imposter syndrome, like you don't belong? Well, you do belong. Wherever you are, you belong. You're supposed to be there. So I decided to face that fear, and I began producing videos about how to do certain accents. Now, I'm by no means a master at accents, but there are some of them I'm just good enough or just that much better than others to provide them with some support when they need assistance. And it's been miraculous. I mean, sure, I get some negative comments and some trolling, but when I get those comments that say, "You helped me on my audition with my Chicago accent," or, "Oh man, I totally relate to that New York accent you gave," that makes me feel good. And whenever I face fears, it just empowers me. And it makes me appreciate my natural gifts that much more. And I'm convinced that I have more gifts that I haven't discovered. So I'm always searching for them every day. That's one of the things that helps me bounce out of bed every morning. Now it's time once again to burst the global bubble. Yes, America is known to be isolated and live in a bubble. So many of us don't know anything about what's going on in the rest of the world. Well, I am determined to help myself and you get a better global perspective. So what was going on during Alexander Hamilton's lifetime? Significant global events that were shaping the world. The French Revolution, 1789 to 1799. This was a monumental event that began just as Hamilton's career was at its peak. This revolution aimed to overthrow the monarchy and establish a republic, inspiring both admiration and fear in the U.S., which influenced political debates and shaped American foreign policy. You've all heard of Napoleon Bonaparte. The Napoleonic Wars were roughly from 1803 to 1815. Following the French Revolution, Napoleon's rise led to wars that reshaped Europe and impacted international trade and alliances, influencing policies like the Embargo Act of 1807. The late 18th century also marked the start of the Industrial Revolution in Britain, introducing mechanized production and innovations like the steam engine that, of course, translated here to America. European powers expanded their colonial empires, affecting trade routes and global politics. These shifts influenced Hamilton's push for a strong economic system. He had the foresight. Latin American independence movements were underway. Figures like Simón Bolívar began to stir revolutionary sentiment in Latin America, signaling the wave of independence that would spread into the 19th century. And what about pop culture in America during Hamilton's era? Pamphleteering and newspapers were a big thing. The 18th century was the golden age of pamphlets and newspapers. And back then, they didn't have the internet, TVs, none of that. These were used to spread ideas, political arguments, and the news, with Hamilton himself contributing significantly through his writings. Then there's the salon culture, not beauty salons. Back then, a salon was a gathering space, often in a private home or a social venue, where intellectuals, writers, philosophers, and political thinkers would come together and discuss ideas, art, current events, typically hosted by influential individuals, often women in European circles. Salons fostered open debate and exploration of topics like politics, philosophy, and science. You had classical music back then, by composers like Mozart, Haydn, that we still listen to today, and theater performances with political undertones. These were very popular in cities like New York and Philly. And again, back then we didn't have TV, so we didn't sit on our couch and watch people speak. We went to public lectures, and those who spoke were highly regarded. There were thinkers like Thomas Paine, perhaps you've heard, is most known for his influential writings that inspired revolutionary ideas and democratic values. His key works include Common Sense. If you've never read this, do it. It's a pamphlet which made a powerful case for American independence from Britain. It was written in plain, direct language. It argues that it was common sense for the colonies to break free from British rule. This rallied support among colonists for the Revolutionary War. It's very inspiring. In art, commissioned paintings and portraits captured the era's grandeur and the intellectual vibrancy with artists like Gilbert Stuart. Now, he is most known for his portraits of George Washington. His iconic unfinished painting in 1796 of Washington is one of the most recognized images of the first U.S. president and has been widely reproduced, including on the U.S. $1 bill. Because of the Enlightenment, interest in science and innovation was at a peak, which influenced Hamilton's economic vision for America. Both Hamilton and Dr. Strange teach us that leadership requires more than power. It demands resilience, vision, and a deep connection to those you serve. Not only that, it requires self-reflection so you don't go down this rabbit hole and become excessive in any one area. For instance, ambition. Their stories show that true power lies in turning chaos into opportunity, blending ambition with humility, and serving a greater purpose. I'm going to share with you 4 ways that you may be able to channel your inner Hamilton or Strange. Number 1, embrace the chaos. Use challenges as opportunity to grow. 2, master your craft. Strive for excellence in what you do, but know you'll never be perfect. If you strive for perfection, you're just going to fall short every time. 3, serve a greater purpose. Use your skills to make a positive impact. Ask yourself, did you do anything today that has a positive impact on someone else's life? If not, check yourself tomorrow. Even if it's just saying someone has a nice smile, it goes a long way. Number 4, balance ambition with empathy. Stay driven, but value those around you. And here's your closing call to action. Take a moment now, reflect on how you can embody the resilience of Hamilton and the transformative wisdom of Dr. Strange. In your life, don't just chase ambition. Turn it into something that benefits more than just yourself. Now it's time for trivia. I'm going to give you a list of trivia questions. I'm not going to provide the answers first. I'm going to give you time to think about them. And then we'll revisit each question, and then is when I'll give you the answer. See how well you do. Let's do this. True or false? Hamilton was the first Secretary of the Treasury. Who killed Alexander Hamilton in a duel? What was the title of Alexander Hamilton's famous essay series written to support the U.S. Constitution? Which president did Hamilton serve under as Secretary of Treasury? Who trained Dr. Strange in the mystic arts after his accident? In the comics, what is the name of Dr. Strange's sentient cloak? Who portrayed Dr. Strange's love interest, Christine Palmer, in the MCU movie? What dark dimension ruler does Dr. Strange battle in his first MCU movie? True or false? Dr. Strange is a founding member of the Marvel superhero group called the Illuminati. Which magical artifact does Dr. Strange use to open portals between dimensions? All right, let's see how many you got. True or false? Hamilton was the first Secretary of the Treasury. That's true. Who killed Alexander Hamilton in a duel? Aaron Burr. What was the title of Alexander Hamilton's famous essay series written to support the U.S. Constitution? That was the Federalist Papers. Which president did Hamilton serve under as Secretary of Treasury? Our first president, George Washington. Who trained Dr. Strange in the mystic arts after his accident? The Ancient One. In the comics, what is the name of Dr. Strange's sentient cloak? The Cloak of Levitation. Who portrayed Dr. Strange's love interest, Christine Palmer, in the MCU movie? Rachel McAdams. What dark dimension ruler does Doctor Strange battle in his first MCU movie? That was Dormammu. True or false? Doctor Strange is a founding member of the Marvel superhero group called the Illuminati. That's true. Okay, for bonus points, name the other 5. Iron Man, Professor X, Mr. Fantastic, Black Bolt, Namor the Submariner. How'd you do? Which magical artifact does Doctor Strange use to open portals between dimensions? The Sling Ring. All right, time for the quotes match. I'm going to give you 2 quotes, and you're going to tell me, was it Alexander Hamilton who delivered the quote or Doctor Strange? Here's the first. We never lose our demons. We only learn to live above them. Those who stand for nothing fall for anything. All right, feeling good about it? Here's the first one. We never lose our demons. We only learn to live above them. That was Doctor Strange reflecting on his journey of overcoming his inner struggles. Which means Alexander Hamilton delivered the line, those who stand for nothing fall for anything. It's time for your Socratic question to challenge your critical thinking skills as you walk away from this podcast. Here's your first of 2 questions. As the first Secretary of the Treasury, Hamilton faced opposition from Jefferson and Madison when proposing the creation of a national bank to stabilize the U.S. economy. He risked being seen as overreaching federal power. Here's your question. If you're Hamilton, would you have pushed forward with the creation of the national bank knowing it might create tensions with states' rights advocates, or sought a less controversial solution? How would you justify your decision? Your second scenario. Doctor Strange cast a dangerous spell to help Peter Parker erase knowledge of his identity as Spider-Man, despite the risks of destabilizing the multiverse. When the spell went wrong, Strange had to decide whether to risk more to fix it or stop helping Peter entirely. If you were Doctor Strange, would you have taken the risk to help Peter or refused to cast the spell altogether? How would you explain your priorities to Peter and the others? There you go. Keep your ambition in check, master the chaos in your life, and don't forget to be a superhero each and every day. Join us next week for The Responsibility of Power, where we get into it with Frederick Douglass and Spider-Man. I love you.